Fear, danger, injustice, persecution. These are crises we all face in our lives. But what if I told you there was an ancient guide to navigating them? Well, in this explainer, we're diving into 5 incredibly powerful psalms that offer a timeless blueprint for finding strength and hope right in the middle of the storm. Let's get into it. So here's our roadmap. We're going to walk through 5 specific psalms, and each one tackles a different kind of crisis. We'll look at deep-seated fear, imminent danger, social injustice, those really personal attacks, and even national distress. It's really a comprehensive guide to resilience, straight from the past. So that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer, right? What can these ancient poems, written thousands of years ago, in these moments of intense, life-altering struggle, possibly teach us about surviving our own modern crises? Well, you might be surprised at just how relevant the answers are. All right, let's start with Psalm 56. This is such a raw and honest prayer, and it was written from a place of just extreme fear. This isn't some abstract idea. It's a real response to a genuine life or death situation. So to really get this, you have to picture the scene. David is on the run from King Saul, and he has fled right into the lion's den, the Philistine city of Gath. Yeah, that's the hometown of the giant Goliath he famously defeated. He gets recognized, he's seized, and he is completely at the mercy of his enemies. It is hard to imagine a more terrifying spot to be in. And yet, right there in the middle of all that terror, David makes this incredible declaration. Now, pay close attention to the pivot in his words. He doesn't deny his feelings. He doesn't say, "I am not afraid." No, he makes a choice. I will not fear. He's fully acknowledging the threat, but he's actively, consciously deciding where to place his trust. This psalm really lays out a clear path for us. First, it's about making a conscious choice to trust in God's power over human power. It's about having confidence in divine protection even when you can't see it. And then the psalm offers this beautiful, really intimate image, God collecting his servants' tears in a bottle, showing that no part of our suffering, not a single tear, goes unnoticed. And finally, it all leads to this vow to give praise once deliverance comes. So the key takeaway from Psalm 56 is this. Faith isn't some magic button that makes fear disappear. Not at all. It's the anchor that holds you steady inside the storm. It's all about choosing to look beyond the immediate threat to a greater, more powerful reality. Now, building on that theme of trust, let's turn to Psalm 57. The crisis here is just as immediate, but the focus kind of shifts from that internal choice to trust to the external reality of finding a safe place, a refuge. So here we go again. David is a fugitive. He's being hunted by his own king, Saul, who is just eaten up with jealousy. He's found this temporary hiding place in a dark, cold cave, feeling totally alone and vulnerable. You can almost feel the chill and the constant threat of being discovered. The psalm kicks off with this desperate, repeated plea. This is not some polite request. It's a gut-wrenching cry for mercy. He's not trying to hide his desperation. He's bringing his most vulnerable self to God, looking not just for a physical hiding place in that cave, but for a true spiritual refuge in his Creator. And then the psalm just makes this breathtaking turn. From a whispered plea in a dark cave, David's whole perspective just explodes into this global declaration of praise. He's still in danger, mind you, but his heart has found its true refuge, and it just erupts in worship. He's already celebrating the deliverance he knows is coming. And this is just such a powerful insight. Finding that true safe harbor in God does more than just get you through the crisis. It totally transforms your perspective from one of just surviving to one of celebration and praise. Okay, now we're going to pivot. We're moving from the intensely personal crises of David, and Psalm 58 zooms way out to tackle a societal crisis, systemic injustice and corruption, right in the halls of power. This psalm is a fiery takedown of leaders who abuse their power. It's actually known as an imprecatory psalm, which is basically a prayer that calls for divine judgment. The writer sees a system where the very people who are supposed to uphold righteousness are twisting it for their own gain, silencing the poor and ignoring the vulnerable. It's just this raw cry against the moral decay of an entire society. Now, this is one of the most jarring verses in the entire book of Psalms. The language is stark, it's violent, but what it communicates is an absolute confidence in God's justice. The imagery isn't about personal revenge.
It's about the profound relief and vindication the righteous will feel when God finally and decisively sets things right.
So, for anyone who has ever felt powerless in the face of corruption, the message here is one of ultimate hope. It's basically saying that human injustice has an expiration date. There is a higher court, and it will ensure that righteousness ultimately wins.
All right, let's return to a personal crisis. Psalm 59 finds David surrounded once again. This time, King Saul has sent soldiers to his house to watch him and then kill him in the morning.
The psalm paints this really vivid contrast. On one side, you have the enemies, and they're described as these snarling dogs roaming the city at night, just full of menace and chaotic energy. But David's response? It's the complete opposite. Instead of panicking, he decides he's going to meet the morning with a song, celebrating God's power and mercy. The lesson here is really about our focus. Yeah, the opposition might be loud and threatening, like howling dogs, but what this psalm teaches us is that focusing on God's faithfulness, His power, and His mercy can actually turn our fear into a song of strength. Our response isn't dictated by the noise of our enemies, but by the character of our God. And finally, let's look at Psalm 60, where the crisis expands from just one person to an entire nation. This is about collective failure and the difficult path to restoration. The context for this one is a national disaster. The army has been defeated, the land itself is shaken, and the people feel scattered and maybe even abandoned by God. There's this sense that this defeat isn't just bad luck. It's a consequence of their own failings, a form of divine discipline. After lamenting their situation, the psalm makes this really powerful turn. It's an admission that all their human strategies and all their own strength have failed them. The only hope for victory and restoration lies in turning back to God. It becomes this national rallying cry, moving from acknowledging defeat to declaring total dependence on God for any future victory. So, when you put it all together, these 5 psalms provide a remarkably complete blueprint, don't they? For internal fear, the call is to trust. For external danger, to find refuge. When you see societal corruption, believe in divine justice. For personal attacks, focus on God's faithfulness. And for national failure, seek His restoration. In every single case, the answer consistently points in the exact same direction: a radical dependence on God. And this brings us right back to where we started, but now with a challenge. This ancient guide has laid out a clear path through fear, injustice, and despair, a path that leads toward hope. So it leaves us with a fundamental question we all have to reflect on. In our own moments of crisis, whatever they may be, where will we choose to place our trust?